Today, we're going to completely bypass all that fake internet wealth you see every single day, and instead, we're diving straight into the exact mathematical blueprint you need to escape the exhausting paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. Look, we are not dealing in fantasies today. We're dealing in the real numbers that can fundamentally shift how you live your life.
You see, most finance experts out there are trying to sell you a dream. And we all know the one, right? It's heavily featuring fast cars, luxury watches, and retiring early on some private island. They are constantly showing you this glittering finish line without ever showing you the grueling first mile. Because the financial reality for most people is vastly different. It's the constant grinding stress of just surviving. It's waking up in the middle of the night worrying about covering next month's rent or desperately figuring out how to survive the next unexpected bill.
To truly understand this reality, I want you to imagine for a second that you're walking across a high wire, hundreds of feet in the air, but there is absolutely no net below you. Every single step you take is filled with this paralyzing fear, because you know that one tiny mistake means total disaster. Well, that is exactly what living with $0 in the bank feels like. But building a sturdy safety net, it completely changes your life. Suddenly, you're on that exact same high wire, but you've got a thick, sturdy net just a few feet below your boots. You might still stumble, sure, but you won't be destroyed. Okay, let's dive into the actual math here. The one number that actually changes your life in the United States, the ultimate safety net for the average household, is exactly $20,000. Now hold on before you roll your eyes, because 20 grand sounds kind of small compared to the millions flaunted on social media. I really need you to stay with me here. Hitting this specific milestone is the most difficult and the absolute most vital part of your entire financial journey. The math behind that number is actually fascinating. If you look at the average cost for rent or a mortgage, along with groceries, insurance, and basic utilities, most households are spending between $3,000 and $4,000 every single month just to exist. So when you run the numbers, saving $20,000 buys you exactly 6 months of your own life. I really want to let that sink in for a second. You are not just hoarding pieces of paper in a bank vault somewhere. You are literally buying 6 months of your own life. This foundation gives you breathing room. It gives you the literal right to breathe and the power to look a toxic boss in the eye and say no to a soul-draining job. Why? Because you've got half a year of runway to go out and find something better. You're buying freedom.
And without this foundation, you just remain trapped in what we call survival mode. Think about it. When you have $0 in your bank account, your brain is actually physically incapable of making long-term decisions. It's simply too busy screaming and worrying about what happens if your car breaks down tomorrow, or how you're going to keep the lights on next week. This is the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. It's a hamster wheel specifically designed to keep you exhausted and stuck.
So the most crucial point here is that when you build this net and remove that constant fear, your brain finally switches from survival mode into growth mode. You completely stop looking for get-rich-quick schemes. You see, desperation is the primary reason people fall for scams or lose everything in the stock market. They just feel like they need a miracle to survive. But with your $20,000 foundation, you don't need a miracle anymore.
Which brings us to a hidden penalty of survival mode. Section 1, the poor tax, and how being broke actively costs you more money.
When you don't have a safety net, a simple flat tire turns into a massive financial crisis. Let's say your car needs a $1,000 repair, and you have to slap it on a credit card with an aggressive 20% interest rate. Well, congratulations, that repair just cost you up to $1,500 by the time you actually pay it off. You are literally being penalized for being broke. But with your fortress built, you pay in cash, zero interest. You essentially get a VIP discount on life just because you plan to hid.
So, how do we actually start building this financial fortress when literally everything feels so expensive right now? Well, first things first, we have to stop the leaks. You have to take a really honest look at what is secretly draining your money every month. And I have to ask you directly, is your phone secretly draining your wealth?
I know it sounds trivial, but paying over $100 for a premium data plan and a brand new device when a budget carrier and a paid-off phone costs maybe $20 a month might seem like a small thing. But fixing that one single leak adds nearly $1,000 a year back into your pocket. That's a grand that belongs in your safety net instead of resting in the pocket of some giant corporation.
Now, stopping leaks is just the start. You absolutely must avoid the biggest budget mistake out there, which is lifestyle creep. This is exactly how people end up feeling completely broke even when they're making great money. Every time they get a raise or a bonus, they immediately spend it on a nicer apartment or a brand new car. They increase their survival costs at the exact same rate as their income.
If you do this, you're just putting yourself on the exact same hamster wheel, just running at a much higher speed.
To truly build wealth, you've got to keep your costs low as your income grows. You take that extra cash and you weld it into your $20,000 wall. And the way you do this is by putting it into a high-yield savings account. Please, do not leave it in a traditional big bank that pays you a fraction of a penny in interest. In a high-yield account, your money actually goes to work for you, earning you a few $100s a year just for sitting there. This is the first time you'll actually see the math working for you instead of against you.
All right, moving on to Section 2, traps to avoid, and protecting your financial fortress from illusions.
The biggest illusion out there is investing before you're actually ready. I see beginners trying to pick individual stocks or jumping into the latest crypto trend without even having 1 month of rent saved up. This is a complete recipe for disaster. Think about it. If the market drops and you suddenly need money for a medical emergency, you'll be forced to sell your investments at a devastating loss. Your safety net absolutely has to come first.
And even when you do get to the point where you're ready to invest, beware of the so-called experts. Financial advisors will very often push things like whole life insurance or manage funds with a seemingly small, tiny 1% fee, but the real math there is terrifying. Over several decades, that innocent-looking 1% fee can actually cannibalize up to 40% of your total wealth. You have to understand that absolutely no one cares about your money as much as you do.
The internet promises excitement, right? Hype and overnight riches. But this explainer is about truth. True wealth is built on boring, consistent habits. It's built on rejecting the hype, really understanding the math, and being the sole architect of your own numbers.
So if you're watching this and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by that big $20,000 total, take a breath. Just follow this blueprint step by step. Focus entirely on that first $1,000. Once you hit that, aim for $5,000. Just lay every single brick deliberately until your fortress reaches $20,000 high. I promise you, you will find that you are a completely different, much calmer, and smarter person than when you started.
Because once you hit this milestone, a massive psychological shift occurs. You are no longer a victim of the economy. You become the architect of your own future. Because you aren't waking up worried about the next bill, you finally have the true stability to handle the ups and downs of the market, which allows you comfortably look at long-term strategies like index fund investing or real estate. We want a life that is supported by logic rather than luck. So as we wrap up this blueprint today, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Will you just keep walking that high wire blind, hoping you don't fall, or are you ready to look at your math and lay the very first brick of your financial fortress today?